Dare to observe. In this episode interview, you will get to meet Danilo, a persona of so many faces and hats. Out of many, he's a psychologist, coach, product marketeer, former dancer, and lately also a host of the podcast show called Psychologist Reacts. We discuss the concepts of personal leadership, self awareness, taking ownership of your life, your behavior, and your decisions. Danilo shares his journey on how he approaches life, when and why he decides to take a pivot, and how he nourishes his inner voice and intuition. Another beautiful piece of wisdom and inspiration, if you ask me. And last but not least, go ahead and sign up for Danilos podcast community newsletter on his website, mentioned in the description of the episode, and make the chance of winning a free 45-minute coaching session with him. Enjoy the episode. Ooh, okay. Oh my God, it's happening. Hello, good morning, Danilo. Hi. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me, first of all. And how are you? What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm excited. You are one of the first men speakers in the podcast channel, and I'm very curious to also feel the masculine energy in the conversations and just a different energy. And I think I'm excited. As always, there's always a beautiful story behind the conversation. So I'm really looking forward to what's gonna surface out today. So thank you again for joining, for devoting time to speak to me. So as I always start the conversation, tell me who Danilo is. Who is this person in front of me?
So Danilo is, in fact, Danilo. That's my first name. Born and raised in Italy in 1983 in a very small village by the Mediterranean Sea. Grew up in Italy for the first 7 years of my life. Moved to Germany after my parents separated. Was in Germany until almost the end of my studies in psychology, and then moved to the Netherlands for a second study in performing arts / contemporary dance. Have been living in the Netherlands since 2008, therefore. And due to circumstances, at one point I had to stop my performance career, got back into the world of started in the world of business, which up until this day I'm very fascinated by, and kind of found my roots back, or my roots in psychology back, through following a coaching study a few years back at this point, coaching people ever since, and then putting all the dots together, connecting the dots by starting a podcast, in fact, about the psychology, or looking at contemporary topics through the lens of psychology. And for the rest, I would say I'm a very life-embracing, art and nature and friendship-loving person, and people-loving person. So I don't know. I hope that this gives you kind of an idea of who I am.
Oh yeah, beautiful timeline, and then also a bit of values here and there. I think it's a super beautiful capsule of the essence, and I'm so happy and of course curious to get deeper in some of the components. So let me just start with one thing that, because I now reminded me about your art journey and your art interest or your passion. How did you always feel that you want to go for art and dance and that artistic field, or how was your journey to connect to your inner voice? Maybe I would say.
I've always been super artistic. I think if you were to ask my mom how I spent my childhood, it was mostly alone in my room painting. So that was what I did for the most part. And I think that there was an urge to do something with that beyond the level of it being a hobby, I would say. And I don't know, somehow it was kind of a calling at the time when dance came into my life. I'd always been very physical. I had been an athlete for many years before that, so I was very connected to my body and my physical essence, let's say. But somehow the creative aspect was always missing. In top sports, it's not so much about creativity as it is about performance, I would say. And I don't know, it was an epiphany moment. I don't know how that came to life. Probably I watched Billy Elliot or something, and it touched me deeply, and I thought, like, okay, this is my path. And then I got into it, and it was a very beautiful chapter of my life, which, even though, and I think this is probably also interesting for our interview, actually taught me a lot about leadership as I do not appreciate it. So there's a lot in my experience as a performing artist that kind of also brought me to who I am and how I experience work-life leadership management nowadays. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to dig up here, I guess.
Wow. Okay. I'm sensing that indeed then there will be an interesting topic to delve into a little bit deeper. And what comes to my mind to me is that I learned a lot from the sucky managers or from the sucky leadership and not to do, or what was really horrible to do or not to do. So yeah, so even though they were just very bad, I'm also kind of grateful for those people to be in my life, because they could really clarified my path or my standpoint in how I want to be or how I want to operate in a business environment or just overall in life. So before we go there a little bit, I would like to ask you, you said about the epiphany, and I'm also always curious to hear how was it for you to follow your intuition or to trust your intuition that actually that's the path you really want to go? Did you have any doubts, or it was really, really clear, very like light tunnel, path that there's not a way, I'm just going forward because?
Yeah, interesting question. It's always a mix, I would say, with me, that on the one hand, there is a clear sense of direction. But then I think what I've discovered the most throughout my life is that actually after that initial intuition or epiphany or whatever you want to call it, for me, it's really about just starting a path and discovering the rhythm as I am walking. So I'm not so much of a planner and trying to map out all pros and cons. Instead, what I prefer to do is kind of have an initial calling intuition, and as I'm walking, discovering what it actually does to me and how I feel about it. And usually that opens way more doors than if I were to really map it out up front, create lists of all the pros and cons of either going or not going in a certain direction. Latest example could be that I have a new, it's not even new, it's a year now that I work at a new company in Amsterdam. And I had been working in marketing for 5-6 years before that. And without knowing, I actually applied to a marketing position that was in product and innovation and not in a marketing team. Not knowingly, I entered that new position and started to work in the context of product and innovation. And then I discovered, okay, actually, this is something that gives me way more joy and pleasure and triggers me much more mentally than the setting that I was in previously. And had I tried to plan this, I could never have come up with it because I had no idea. And just having an intuition about a vacancy, applying, going with the flow, and then discovering what it actually does to me and stay kind of in touch with myself as I am in the situation opened way more doors than I could have imagined beforehand.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'm just now trying to visualize is indeed that you go through a forest, and in the end, you just can only see a couple of steps up front. You can't see the entire forest, but then you keep on moving, and then you decide the path, and you either turn right or left or move on. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. But then, you told me that you always check with yourself what it does to you. How do you nourish the dialogue within yourself or your inner self?
Many different ways, I would say. Creating islands of silence is important. So whether that be in moments of meditation, meditation and movement, aka yoga, of course, having gone through quite in-depth coaching study that required a lot of self-exploratory, I would say, journeys and personal leadership, discovering my own personal leadership. So there's many different ways in which I try to establish that. And mostly it's just, I don't know. I think about having regular check-ins with myself and try and avoid autopilot mode as much as possible. I mean, I do fall into it very often, I must say, especially if, I don't know, ambition takes over or whatever. But still, like reminding myself that there's a more profound essence to anything that I'm doing, and I should stay in touch, and I just make sure I do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's simple, maybe not so easy always, but just simple. I think that's the key, right?
It's not easy at all. It's just still like gotta do it,
Yeah. Oh, I love it. So I think it's a beautiful bridge right now what you mentioned about your journey or your connection to your or personal leadership. Then what does it actually mean to you? What is the definition of leadership or personal leadership? You name it. Let's just kick it off from there.
For me, the very essence of personal leadership is really, and that comes back in all types of coaching and therapy forms in different shapes and forms, of course. But for me, it's really about having a clear understanding and perception of myself in whatever type of context that I'm in, whether that be a one-on-one type of conversation, or whether that be situations in which power plays a role, or ambition plays a role, or money plays a role, or sex plays a role, or all those different settings that one has to navigate in daily life. They, of course, have an impact on how I perceive information, on how I elaborate information, how I store information, how I recall, and how I therefore react to the circumstances that I'm in. And I think that without that very specific awareness of myself in whatever context it is very easy to have reactions that are not appropriate or can damage me, damage others. And I think that personal leadership is really about self-awareness and being able to take one's own share in a situation into one's own hands and navigate from that place.
Yeah, I definitely agree that taking ownership of who you are and in the context of everything or everyone else around
Exactly.
you.
I mean,
Yeah,
imagine a situation
absolutely.
that triggers me to feel shame, or like there is a loss of face going on. So how do I usually react? And knowing and having that awareness, of course, will make me act very differently from just shooting out my first instinctive reaction, which might be inappropriately aggressive or just generally inappropriate to the context. So I think personal leadership is really a very important guiding principle in any sort of interaction.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I'm just now. It's landing because I think it was beautifully said, and I think it was I think what I was trying to explain or show in my podcast interviews, especially that there is just this inner ethical morale, so to speak, code of conduct that we want to establish, I think, through our experience, through our life, and then hopefully it's then can be surfaced and voiced through our behavior or reactions, right? And then how do you nurture it, or how do you go through your path to arrive to that, to feel that it is who Danilo truly is?
It takes a lot of practice, to be honest. First of all, I think in the beginning, it's actually learning how to see. So, like, as I said, for example, how do I even feel when I'm ashamed? Because I think that in daily life, things can often happen so quickly that we're already on to the next before we even took the time to digest our own reaction to a certain circumstance.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
sometimes it's really about taking the time and allowing yourself to take a closer look. And that can be for anything. I mean, for me, it could be, as I said, maybe shame or I don't know, situations that make me aggressive. How are those situations typically? You know, so it's really about learning how to see and to look and to dissect situations. So this is how I learned it in the beginning, and then nourishing it is really an ongoing process, because obviously emotions just are. It's not like we control them, but then we do have very big possibilities when it comes to how do we elaborate our own reaction and how do we use it, or like what shape
Yeah.
will our ultimate reaction actually have. And this can be anywhere, like in any sort of work encounter, in my own relationship. There are always situations that trigger me in a specific way, and there's always either the option of just navigating life in autopilot mode and then being a dickhead about certain things just because you didn't realize that you have your own share in the situation, or taking a step back and integrating whatever it is, your aggression, your shame, your sadness, your pride, or whatever, into your authentic reaction to the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it just, I mean, it sounds, or it sounds so inspiring or so obvious, but then when I think of my trigger situation, it's just so hard to just to do something else than like, okay, just be myself. And then it's also me being part of the responsibility in the situation. Then it's just not
No, it's
always
super
happening.
difficult. I mean, if I think of my relationship, we can have the same triggers for the last 10 years already. Still, you know, it's important to be aware of them. And over time, I really believe that you can shape your inner world and reactions, therefore, very differently and more consciously.
Yeah, 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 yeah. and we got to meet people, or we get to meet people just to keep on practicing, especially the biggest triggers, right? And the biggest mirrors that the people, I believe, are for us in our life journey. But then you also mentioned that you are a coach and you are coaching people, and then based on your experience, your own one, and also from your clients, what is the biggest struggle to live your full authenticity, or to connect to your full authentic well-being?
I think that connecting to whatever inner place that you have most resistance against is usually a very painful experience. So often, I think it's really a matter of inner negotiation. Is it easier for me to just move on and go on the way that I always have? Or, and because that is, of course, a very immediate short-term benefit, right? Like, okay, I just move on. It's quick. It's easy. I know it works. Or do I go or choose the route where I reconnect to aspects of my own personal history, personal experience that are painful, and maybe have a more beneficial change a longer time from now? And I think that this is often that's a big difficulty. Imagine, I don't know, if we speak about gender, for example, right? So there are certain expectations that we grow up in this world with that are simply there because of the fact that we are born boys or assigned male sex at birth or female sex at birth. And that comes with a lot of pain, because that requires from us, for example, just to give one example, to suppress certain authentic feelings that we have while growing up, or certain authentic reactions, and emphasize others instead. And of course, that's a very core pain that we grow up with, and that is somehow stored there. So then as a grown-up, you have the choice of either going to that place, understanding it's there, and then integrating it into your current experience and moving from that specific new authentic place, or you can just perpetuate what you've always been doing, keep up the pain that you have, keep up the resistance that you have, and I don't know, go about your life how you always have, and then not solve anything. So those are the two options. Both are valid, and both have their benefits, I would say. It's a matter of choice and authenticity that you want.
Yeah. Or I think many times people just are not aware that they feel pain.
True.
Or that they are, that their life is full of pain.
True.
And they're just thinking that that's how their life is, or subconsciously they're just numbing themselves, kind of closing the access to any emotions, because it's just safer, or I think safer, or less harmful or less painful to themselves.
True.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I do think that there is, even if you're not aware of pain, I do think that there is always, and most of the time it's probably through physical symptoms, there will always be a way for pain to show itself. That can be back pain, that can be stress levels, that can be whatever we define as a burnout. There are many shapes in which it presents itself. But if you, and then we get back to the field of personal leadership and self-observation, if you stay in touch, you will be able to see that something's up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking of the body part, which of course it's also very dear to my heart and to my practice. And it's just so easy just to go to a doctor, and take a pill, and then move on with your life, and just to patch it and put a bandage on, instead of thinking what can actually my body is telling me, or what should I be looking at. And I don't think we get to learn from anywhere in our young lives, or even adolescence or young adulthood, to really establish that intelligence, that wisdom that our body is trying to tell us.
Quite the opposite. Imagine a boy feeling authentic, and that's my personal experience of feeling authentic, I don't know, pain and wanting to cry. And in fact, quite the opposite. It's not nourishing, as in like, hey, what are you sad about? It's going to be like, hey, man up, be a boy, be a man. Or for a girl, like, hey, why are you being decisive? You should be accommodating. Yeah. What are you doing? So.
Yeah, or why are you loud?
Exactly.
Or why are you angry? Don't show it. In Polish, we even have a saying that anger makes you not pretty, or it damages your beauty. And it's like, oh my God, really? That was my journey. That showing anger or showing resistance or not, or disagreement to certain things when my boundaries were overtaken, which was a big part. Like, then I did not know how to actually establish my boundaries, or I didn't know that I should have one or I have any, but it was just so completely suppressed because I'm just supposed to be obedient, nodding and accommodating, as you said, lady in town or in the group. Yeah, so damaging. And then it just takes years and years to get out of it. And hopefully, when you're lucky, you are realizing that, and then you hopefully work on it. But then it goes through pain indeed. Oh yes, I'm letting it sink.
Let it sink. Can always edit the break later.
Oh yeah, I think it's fine. But yeah, it's always a good, comforting feeling that whatever happens, it can be cut out. But yeah, I'm just like thinking, because also now one of your podcast episodes really reaffirmed in me the whole notion or disagreement about what gender is, right? And why do we put so much emphasis on it from the very start without letting the human being just blossom and open and grow up and then see what happens, right? And then can you tell us a little bit more about that episode for those people who haven't listened? But I'm super recommending everyone to listen to it afterwards, because it's an amazing way and shift on the gender or sex.
Yeah, I mean, gender and sex are not my specialty generally. It's just, I mean, interesting. Yeah. I dive into topics for each episode, so it's not. I don't want to present myself as a gender expert by any means. But what the episode essentially was about, I took as a starting point gender reveals, which are a very strange phenomenon to me. This thing of like, oh, let's have a celebration to find out if whatever is in your belly now is going to come out with male or female sex, And I was like, okay, this is really absurd. And why do we anyway want to know? Because eventually every person that is born is an individual that doesn't necessarily conform to what you think that person should become, but they just develop however they need to develop, So whether you put a stamp on it before or not, what is the real difference? So why is there such an interest for knowing it? What does it really do to a becoming parent to know? And I was just curious about that. And in order to kind of give it a bit of context in the episode, I kind of went through all the independent variables of what gender is constituted of, and kind of show that they are completely not correlated. They're all independent dimensions of gender. So if that is the case, how do we actually then just narrow it down to boy, girl, man, woman, female, male, when there are too many independent dimensions to begin with? So that is what the episode is about. And then in the end of the episode, I kind of give a few hypotheses, or I discuss a few hypotheses as to why I think people might still want to know. So if you're interested, go listen. Curious what you have to say.
Yeah, because I think it just kind of gives a teaser for anything that we talk about in binary black and white situations, right? They're just either or. And I even read the other time that having a name for a baby, if you're talking about the gender reveals, etc., the topic, that having a name for a baby already before he or she is born, without even seeing that human being, it's already kind of putting that person in this kind of a box, and then hearing some parents saying, no, I first want to get to know my baby for a couple of days and then see what happens. Like, what does it make me feel if I call him X or Z in terms of names? So yeah, that I think was a beautiful, just a different way to just welcome a human being into the world and letting him be the way he is. And then we're just there to guide him instead of, put things as imposing or as figuring it out for himself, because that's supposed to be in that country. If you're a boy, you do X, Y, Z.
I think it ties back into nicely also with the question of personal leadership. If you know about your own history, in my case, for example, with being born male and being brought up as a boy, and the pain that it caused in me to a certain extent, if I'm aware of that, then I can have much more awareness of why do I want to perpetuate that? What if I were to stop perpetuating maleness for future generations? What would it do to me? Would it trigger insecurities in me? Would it bring back up all kinds of old pains about what it did to me, and what the expectations towards me did to me, so in that sense, I think personal leadership again here also plays a role, even when becoming a parent, actually in every situation in life. So just
absolutely.
I don't know, had this quick epiphany here.
True. It's everywhere, right? It's all about, I think, indeed, authenticity, awareness, and taking ownership of who you want to be as a person. And I think it's like, I think you can just go forever and have millions of examples, right? Where it's indeed so helpful and so empowering as a tool to keep on nourishing it within you. And so, okay, Danilo, then I think it got me really intrigued about your journey, indeed, about your masculinity or your approach to being a male, and how was your journey to and what's your outcome in certain of ways. So what is your definition, or how do you want to tap as a person to the masculine and feminine energy? Because I believe we should have access to both of them regardless of our gender and sex.
Interesting that it's becoming an interview about gender, interestingly enough.
I'm not sure. Somehow it went there.
Look, it's a tricky one, because also being a gay man, there is a lot of I would say inner struggle with manliness to begin with, within me. I don't know if that's a general experience. But it is definitely something that it does play a role in all types of situations. For example, if I think of situations in which I have to be firm and take on a more classical leadership role, I think, or I assume that compared to a straight counterpart, male counterpart, I probably am much more struggling with, am I taken seriously? Am I manly enough? Do I have enough alpha in me to be leading and steering the situation appropriately? And in that sense, I think that my own gender experience and gender identity, based on probably my sexual orientation, definitely play a big role in a lot of, or did in the past at least, play a big role in what I did, and also which life I chose for myself, I guess. And I feel that this is changing more and more. Like, I do have a different level of confidence, but I think it did take me way longer than I assume, at least. That's my projection. It would have taken a straight guy in my same situation, and then as for accessing male and female energies, I don't know. I find it a difficult construct. In the coaching education that I followed, that was a very big part of that. It was this very archaic, there is a female and a male root and everything. And I don't know, like I question that, because I do think that there is experiences that are also just universal. I do not want to perpetuate the thought that, for example, connecting to aggression and feistiness and being decisive is necessarily the same as connecting to a male energy. For me, that is just connecting to aggression and connecting to feistiness and being assertive, same as connecting to the sense of wanting to care for somebody or be nurturing. For me, I don't want to see it as connecting to my female energy. It's just connecting to that specific type of energy. So I wonder, I mean, I know that it's a very common perceived notion, but I kind of question whether that is really the case. There is for sure a hormonal aspect to the whole thing, but I don't know, like I'm a bit careful with perpetuating that thought.
Oh, thank you for the different perspective. It will definitely give me some food for thought afterwards, because that's indeed how I was approaching certain things. Not that I'm, oh my god, I'm gonna be angry now, so I will connect to my masculine, but kind of feeling that there are two different, thinking of indeed binary things, like two different opposing forces, and then we tend to connect more to one or to two. Maybe just sometimes for me was an easier way to visualize or to bring a metaphor to see Like, why do I always have to be angry or aggressive? Maybe now it's time to also be a bit more nurturing or soft, or
it's all on a spectrum. Same with
quite.
personality types. Like, nobody is either a narcissist or not a narcissist. You know, like everything from narcissism to any other personality type to I don't know, depression, anxiety. It all lives on different spectrums, and we all are located on all of those spectrums on some point, you know. So in that sense, our existence is a profile of everything, of all spectrums that are there. So in that sense, I wonder how much sense it makes to be binary about anything, actually, you know. So
yeah, absolutely true. Well, I can definitely hear I'm talking to a very educated, full experience with coaching and psychology person. So I'm definitely learning way more than I ever thought I would from just a beautiful interview with someone. And then we are slowly coming towards the end, but I have a few topics I would like to tap on a little bit here and there, because my interviews have been always kind of a metaphor of a journey, because I believe everyone has its own journey, and it's based on background, based on context and everything, and depending on how we want to shape it and where we want to go or how we arrive there. And I believe, every journey is unique, special, and yet so important, and also I think very inspiring for everyone else, even though it's just it can be just your so-called neighbor without being diminishing a neighbor, etc. I'm just trying to compare that we don't have to only learn from big names and big gurus out in the world on the internet, and I would like to tap a little bit onto the lows of the journey, right? We a little bit talked about insecurities or some struggles or triggers here and there. What helped you, or who, back on track whenever you've been doubting or whenever you've been a little bit struggling with, am I doing the right thing? Is it still me? And where I'm in that situation right now. Sorry for a long question.
No.
I'm giving it the time to.
I don't know, maybe it could turn out to be a bit of an esoteric answer, but I do really trust my body a lot. Having been an athlete and then a dancer, I think that I really cultivated a very tight relationship with my body. And I do really think that whenever I am struggling or off track, for whatever that can mean, there is some sort of sign in my body that will make me understand that is the case. So I think so the body is one. So I think really exercising, even just walking, doing yoga, meditating, doing very heavy physical activity is one. Then in a period when I would say I was the most lost and starting to understand that the path that I had chosen for myself, or let's say the solutions that I had created for myself in order to deal with life were not working anymore. It really helped me tremendously to see a therapist. It was great. It was a really good experience, and was very confronting at the same time. Because even in therapy, I would be confronted with, I don't know, simple things as like, oh, is it actually important enough what I have to say? Like, is what I want to share in this session actually legit and relevant for an entire session? Or should I just be dealing with it by myself? Like, so even in therapy, all those thought patterns came up. But therapy definitely helped me. And I would say also my coaching study helped me, like the entire self-investigation and exploration, which then I just continue nowadays outside of the education that I followed. So I think those are probably the main ones. My body, when it was really like really hit rock bottom, then therapy, and for the rest, really staying in touch, continue exploring, and kind of be aware in all types of encounters that I have, whether that be in my relationship with friends. So those are the things I think that really help me stay on track.
Thank you for sharing. I'm just now thinking out loud that what if the body, or we can't hear the signals from the body or read the signals, or if it's just mind telling us, like you're not good enough, or don't go there, it's too dangerous, don't change the status quo, etc. Like, how do you then establish that that the relationship with your mind, and your thoughts, in the nonviolent communication, it's called jackal thoughts, those judgments or inner critic, and then the body. So how is that multi-personal conversation happening in you, and then how do you distinguish?
Oh, that's a complicated one, I would say. I would say to
Yeah.
begin with, it's really allowing yourself to have a very scientific, non-judgmental moment-to-moment awareness, which is, let's say, very present in mindfulness meditation. But without even meditating, I think just allowing yourself to even see how you are when you get very stressed and judgmental about yourself is already a big first step. Because I think that it's very easy to just get into the struggle of self-doubt and then not know how to get out of it anymore. Sometimes it's good to just observe. I would say that is one. And not always needing to find solutions. I think that this is a very common misconception, even of people that go to therapy, for example, of like, okay, I'm depressed, need to be not depressed, or I'm anxious,
True.
make me not be anxious anymore, And I kind of
Yeah.
believe in,
I
I
need
need a
answers.
solution now, And it's like, no, actually, it's also fine to just integrate, like maybe anxiety and depression are also just a part of you, same as self-doubt might be a part of you. So how do I, first of all, observe it, understand it's there, which shape it has exactly within my own personality and being, and then how do I integrate it in my experience? So I think that is probably the biggest tip that I would always have, like dare to observe. It's going to be painful enough. You don't have to solve yet.
Oh, I think it was a beautiful punchline, like dare to observe, as a closing and a description in the episode. Yeah, I think it captures everything in a metaphorical, spiritual, and physical level. I think everything can be there. Super. So Danilo, I think we're coming towards the end. I'm just very curious what your next steps are, what your next plans are with your podcast or your other, projects or undertakings. Is there anything you want to share with us?
I don't think I have any next big steps. I'm buying an apartment soon. That is a very big step in my life.
Oh, that is
Completely
absolutely.
unrelated. And for the rest, no, I think I just want to keep on having fun and exploring through my podcast. It really is a beautiful opportunity for me to stay in touch with psychology, even though in my daily life I do something not so related, like kind of related, but not really. So yeah, I think I'm excited about more collaborations like the one that we're doing now, and yeah, I don't know, like kind of continue to explore the world and observe the world through a specific lens, in that case, the lens of psychology. So yeah, for example, later today, I will be recording an episode about NFTs. I don't know if everybody has heard about it, the non-fungible tokens, this whole massive trend that blew up where an artwork was suddenly sold for $69 million. And it's an NFT actually. Anyway, like so, stuff like
Yes.
this really
Okay.
gets me intrigued to like understand what's happening in the world, but then not just report on it as the news would, but really try and understand why is it happening the way it's happening and why do people do what they do. It's I think this will be the fascination of my life until I die, probably. So yeah, I think I will just continue doing what I do. That's plan number one, and
Yeah.
try and be well along the way, as much as that is possible.
Oh, beautiful. Super. And then maybe Daniela, since you have such a rich background in many disciplines and psychology is a big one, I presume. Are there any book recommendations that you would like to share with us? Any that struck you or, kept you awake or inspired lately that you have read?
Not really. I mean, I read a lot of scientific literature for my episodes, so I go really back into articles in magazines, in scientific magazines or
Yeah.
journals. So I don't think that is super interesting. Otherwise, I think when I really want to switch off, I don't read so much inspirational literature. I really read prosa
Okay.
more than anything else.
Oh,
Yeah, I
prosa.
have this
Okay.
thing
Yeah.
where I feel like, okay, if it's in my free time, I feel odd going to bed reading a leadership or business related book because I feel like it's going to get me excited and then I can't sleep. So no, I don't really have big book recommendations at the moment. Depending on what, like if there's something specific, I could tell you a book that helped me with that. But
Then how about the one prosa? One thing that, because I'm very curious to
at the
also
at the
explore that
moment,
field.
I'm reading a book by an author called Ammaniti, an Italian author, and it is about the story of a little boy somewhere in central Italy. Maybe it connects to me. I don't even know. And yeah, basically his life experience. It's very simple. Like
Okay.
I think I read very simple
Humanity.
books to switch off my brain. So not much to get from me there,
Okay.
I think. Or in fact, it's really business and really scientific literature. So it's a bit like those two. So
Yeah. 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 I believe every book can give us in some way something. It doesn't have to be super tangible. It can nourish our soul or our just peace of mind. So I think they're also needed, those so-called lighter books, so to speak. Super. I think we're coming towards the end. Danilo, thank you so much for opening your heart, sharing your experiences, sharing your very rich knowledge and experience. And I'm so excited to listen to your podcast, to your next episodes as well, where I'm gonna tap into. I was really inspired by your curiosity and your constant, questioning why, to really be able to understand. So it really gave me quite some energy to take it from that conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. It was very nice.
Thank you.
Till next time.